Welcome back to A Numbers Game with Ryan Girdusky. Thank you guys so much for being here. I am on day 2 of being very sick. So if I sound like not my chipper self, or I sound like a little strange to you guys, I'm considering what I normally do, I am not 100% with you. I apologize. But the show must go on, and we have a show to do, so that's what we're going to do. I wrote an article on my Substack a few days ago about the hockey stick, the coming hockey stick of fundamentalist communities and their birth rates. So people like Haredi Jews, Amish, Mennonites, Latin Mass Catholics, Mormons who still practice polygamy, these religious groups that have lots and lots of babies. Now, they're not all the same. For example, Latin Mass Catholics, there's about 100 to 150,000 of them in America. Some are priests, obviously, but they don't live in cloistered communities. Like they live in St. Mary's, Kansas, or Ave Maria, Florida, but it's very, very few. They mostly live among large masses of population. So it's not the same. But among the cloistered communities, places like Haredi Jews or the Amish, we're seeing a remarkable change. In 1987, in the year that I was born, there were 90,000 Amish in America. That number will increase by 500% by the time I turn 40 next year. And the youngest towns in America are Haredi Jewish towns. They are Kiryas Joel and they are Lakewood, New Jersey. Kiryas Joel, New York, and Lakewood, New Jersey. They have an average age of 16 and 18, respectively. Now, their populations are exploding while the overall birth rate is declining, especially among Black and Latinos. White fertility is up slightly, but it's more flat than up. I mean, it's basically stagnant. I spoke to a demographer who told me the change that's coming is so strong because their birth rates are so high that by 2035 and 2045, they're going to be responsible for increasing the overall white fertility rate. And that's crazy, and also has political implications. Haredi Jews are very political. They vote in big, big, big numbers. By 2035, they're going to be the main opposition to the DSA in New York City. The way that it's moving, the way that it's going, the way the population is exploding. And in places like in among the Amish, they don't vote nearly as much. I know there's a lot of kind of wish casting that the Amish vote, but just 2,568 out of a possible 17,500 in Lancaster County voted in the 2024 election. But even though they don't vote, their bodies will still make up census numbers. So congressional districts may end up being 1/10 or 1/8 Amish in the future, and they won't vote, but the vote of people who do vote in those places will count for more. They'll be able to, it's like places, people who live among illegal immigrants. The bodies count as far as who makes up a district, but they're not voting. Holmes County, Ohio is going to be the first majority Amish county in America, if it's not already. And then LaGrange County, Indiana is not far behind. The populations of these communities, especially the Amish, are going to save a lot of rural counties in the Midwest that are just on the precipice of dying. And, you know, who knows? One day they may save a congressional district from being reapportioned out of the state. You know, I've been thinking a lot about demography, big and small, micro and macro, within a family, within a country, within a culture. Some cultures are on the precipice of extinction. It sounds insane to say out loud, but we have this very fake belief in permanence. Not you, because you're an intelligent person who listens to my podcast, but other people generally assume everything is permanent. We don't like the idea that things just vanish or things can just die off, but it's real. It's true of families, it's true of communities, it's true of countries. Will Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania survive as countries? The three of them combined have so far had 10,000 children so far this year. What about Taiwan? They've only had 30,000. And look how close to China that is. Look how close to Russia the other three are. What about your own family? What about my family? On my mom's side of the family, there are 12 cousins on my generation. 3 are very young, so I won't include them. But of the 9 older ones who are in our 30s and 40s, we've only had 12 children. We would need to have close to 20 to break even. And we've failed at it so far. Maybe a few will have some more, but it is a failure within a family to continue itself. And it's not the most severe. I had a conversation with a very good friend of mine, and she's like 39, and she's, not married, and she's got one sibling who is childless, and most of her relatives are childless. And I just said, you guys are going to have very lonely holidays in the future. You'll be spending your holidays of the future talking about how good things used to be rather than making memories with children in the future. Your bloodline, your history, your heritage, it will be gone if you do not actively participate in moving it forward. And for some people, they don't care about that. That's totally fine. I'm not here to tell anybody, you should have kids if you don't want to have kids. But what does it say about a society that says people want to have kids? They say to pollsters, I want to have kids. And then they just never get around to it. And what happens when that's global? What happens when that's the entire world? Because that's happening across the entire world. I know this is a dicey conversation. I know a lot of women are turned off by this. Your value in life is not just about how many women you produce, how many children you produce. I was on Megan McCain's show the other day, and we're talking about this. And I say, but the truth is, my generation, millennials, have been lied to that you have all the time in the world to start a family. You do not. If you are Gen Z or listen to this, by 25, you should be dating to marry. You should be looking at someone you're dating and say, would this be a good husband? Would this be a good wife? You should not assume you could, at 45, like a celebrity, pop out 2 or 3 kids. It doesn't happen. 9 times out of 10, it does not happen. Lyman Stone is a brilliant demographer, and he's going to talk about birth trends in both globally and in the United States and see what we can learn from it all. It's a fascinating conversation. Listen to that coming up next. Lyman Stone is a demographer and works for the Pronatalism Initiative at the Institute for Family Studies. Lyman, I've wanted to talk to you for so long. Thank you for coming on this podcast.
My pleasure.
So, whenever I talk about demographics to people, it's an issue that people are really interested in, but don't know a lot about. And something I find very frustrating is, and I don't know if you've had this experience, but people sometimes like freeze frame like the world in whatever year they came up, and they'll be like, what do you mean that Mexicans don't have 6 children anymore? Like, they'll say these things and I'm like, no, like teenage pregnancy is not really a thing. Mexicans don't have 6 kids anymore. Like, these things are not, that's what happened, yes, but it's not what currently happens. You ever go through those kinds of experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see this all the time where, talk to people about low fertility and they say, well, but isn't the world headed for overpopulation? It's like, well, the US will very plausibly hit its peak population in the 2050s. So, I mean, the rest of the world, different places may be higher, but a lot of countries are already declining. So, no, I don't think we're headed for catastrophic overpopulation.
Yeah, the
Haven't been for a
1970s.
long time, actually.
Yeah, but that was the whole prediction of the 1970s. And countries like Iran and like China really worked to make sure their population shrunk. Can you paint? So I want to start with a big picture. So can you paint the subject of fertility and demographics from overseas first? What's like going on? Because there are places like Latin America is got terrible fertility rates. Parts of Latin America are behind Western Europe. South Asia is very quickly declining. Parts of Africa are under fertility rates. Could you just kind of give a broad picture of what fertility looks like in the world right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, birth rates are declining all around the world in lots of countries. We see this obviously in Africa. Birth rates have been declining for some time because Africa is still undergoing kind of the first demographic transition, right? Life expectancies rise, more children survive. Families don't need to have as many kids to hit their desired family size. And the result is birth rates fall, but population growth remains very high. So that's still ongoing in Africa. So the fact that fertility is declining in Africa is not terribly shocking because they're still in this historic process that we understand very well. What's more surprising is that fertility rates keep going down, 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 down in countries that are well past that transition. And they are going down seemingly regardless of changes in income or health or education. And what I mean by that is, fertility rates in Thailand today are considerably below 1 child per woman. But Thailand is not a rich country. right? Thailand is not a country of exceptionally high educational attainment. It's just kind of a normal middle income country, but fertility rates are extremely low. In India today, India still has very significant rates of infant and child mortality. Um, and yet fertility is below replacement in India today. Um, so we're seeing this decline in fertility all around the world. You mentioned Latin America. I mean, I want to say there's a couple of Latin American countries that are closing in on one child per woman as well.
Chile.
Um, yeah. And Chile's much lower than much of the rest of Latin America. But I think some Caribbean countries may be getting close as well. I mean, Puerto Rico is below one
Puerto
already.
Rico is the fastest declining place in the entire Western Hemisphere. And I
Yeah, that
explained that to someone. There are
yeah.
as many people in Puerto Rico today as there were in 1970. And it's
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
go lower very, very, very quickly. Part
yeah.
of it's
That's
migration, but no one has children in Puerto Rico.
yeah. So I mean, there's this. We see this in all sorts of places. So that being the case, I think it's worth thinking seriously about what's going on when it seems like all of humanity is kind of simultaneously deciding to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is that something you said once on a podcast. You said we are on the precipice of seeing extinctions of entire groups of people. That entire cultures will just be extinct within our lifetime. Certainly, where my family originally comes from in Lithuania seems like it's headed in that direction. All like the
Mhm.
Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, that whole area, parts of East Asia, these tiny countries with unimaginably low birth rates. It seems like they're not going to survive.
No, I mean, I think that's a very real possibility. If you're a huge country, if you're Brazil, Brazil's not going to vanish in the next few generations. This is very big. Um, but if you're Uruguay, very low birth rates, not that big a population to begin with. A situation where your country shrinks to a point that maintaining your state institutions is very challenging, or where your neighbors decide that you're easy pickings, is very plausible. I mean, certainly the Baltic countries are almost a paradigmatic case of this. I mean, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, um, because they, of course, have a neighbor on their doorstep who who can remember owning them. So, uh, so yeah, I mean, if you're Estonia, a situation where your population falls, over the course of several generations to a trivially small number, to a number that Russia's active manpower might outnumber the population, right? You don't want a situation where your enemy has more soldiers than you have people.
Right.
Now you might imagine, oh well, drones and everything will offset that balance. I mean, maybe, but a country with very few people is also not going to have tons of spare cash to
Right.
buy drones. You say, well, other countries might aid them, but if every country's having decline all at once, again, who has the spare resources to help you?
Well, can I ask you another question? Because I read this probably on Twitter, and I know it was real because I checked the data out later, but I did read it over in Bolivia in South America. I think it's Bolivia, where like 2% of kids under 5 are German.
Yeah,
Because
it's all the Mennonites.
yeah, German Mennonites are having
Yeah,
so many kids in this one country that they went from being like 0.1% to 2% in like 2 generations, and will be a
yeah,
majority by century end, will be like this all German country in like Latin America. And it's not
yeah.
Argentina, you know?
Yeah, I don't, for these high fertility groups, forecasting is always very challenging because, they're as they get more numerous, they start to have to compromise. As strange as it sounds, a very small group doesn't have to compromise with the society around them. But as a group grows, you do start have to make compromises because, you know, if you're not making enough money to pay the taxes to pay the roads, well, the roads stop getting paved, and
Mhm.
now your horse and buggy can't go anywhere.
Right.
Um,
Is
so,
that what
you
we're
know,
seeing in Israel with the Haredi population?
you're starting to see these types of tensions where, you're growing rapidly, but the society actually, Israeli society, if it were 100% Haredi, would be conquered by its neighbors.
Mhm.
And then it would no longer be 100% Haredi. It would be 0% Haredi.
Yeah.
Um, so, uh, um, so a lot of these high fertility minorities have the fundamental challenge that as they grow, their growth strategy becomes difficult to sustain. So I'm a skeptic of these forecasts showing these like massive, growth rates of these groups. But what will be true is they will grow as a share. I don't know if they'll grow to be a majority in Bolivia. I don't know if the Mennonites will be a majority by century end, but they will continue to grow above whatever they are now, which I think right now I wanted to say they're like 4 or 5% of births right
Oh,
now.
probably, yeah.
I think that'll continue to go up for quite a while. But what you will see over time is that even if the individual group stops growing, that their descendants will be a bigger and bigger share, right?
Mhm.
So what will happen is the group will still continue to have high fertility, but their retention rates will decline.
Mm.
And so the group will sort of stabilize its share, but their descendants will continue to grow their share. So actually, a great example of this is actually in Finland. The Lestadian Lutherans have very high fertility rates, but are very socially integrated. They have similar education. They're not technologically Luddites or anything. They have like 6 kids per woman, but they don't even have their own denomination. They're just part of the Finnish Lutheran Church. They're just like a kind of a movement within it. Um,
And they still have
but the
high fertility rate?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, wow.
But the key point is, and they are growing. They're growing as a share of Finland's population. I want to say there's something like 8% of births in Finland or
Mhm.
something. Um, but the key thing about them is their retention rate is, I want to say it's something like 60%, right? Like 40% of kids, Telestadian parents, do not stay in the community. Which is still, they still have enough kids that they keep growing because 60% of 6 is still more than 2.
Mhm.
Um, but their growth is not quite the exponentiating trajectory you would expect from having 4 times the fertility rate of other Finnish people.
Okay, let's talk about America for a second. So one of the things that nobody, like no one in the mainstream media has talked about this, and I don't understand why the mainstream has talked about this, but in the last like 5 years, Black women have stopped having kids in America. The Black birth rate
Yeah.
is it's genuinely
Mhm.
collapsing, where it's probably 1.3 kids per woman, and it used to be well over 2, maybe in the early 2000s. Um, why? Why? I get that question when I bring that up. People are like, "Why?" And I'm like, I
Yeah.
have my own ideas, but what are your ideas?"
So if we look at the decline in fertility in the US over the last uh, 20 years, we can kind of decompose it into 3 pieces. Piece 1 is the rate at which people get married, or partnered. We
Mm,
don't have to say married. We can say married and cohabiting.
it's very progressive.
Cohabitors have a lot higher.
Yeah.
I mean, cohabitors have a lot higher fertility than singles who are not cohabiting. They're
Okay.
they're
Yeah.
more similar to married than non. So let's
Hmm.
say single and cohabiting as a group, and then, or sorry, married and cohabiting as a group, and then singles as a group. Okay, so the rate at which people enter into unions versus not is the first component. Second component is the rate at which people in unions have kids. And the third component is the rate at which people not in unions have kids. Okay. And in the US, what we have seen is the rate of having kids among people who are in unions, who are married mostly, has not really changed.
Mm.
That is, it's not that like the rate at which a husband and a wife look at each other and go, should we have a kid? And they say yes to that has not changed. Like
Okay.
people are pulling the goalie like they always have. Okay. Um, what has changed is that unpartnered women have seen a big decline in fertility rates. And we've seen a huge decline in the rate at which people partner, the rate at which they enter into unions. So, in terms of African American women, their decline in, they already have very low rates of partnership.
Mhm.
Like African American women just have much lower rates of being in a stable union to begin with. Um, which is why a huge share of African American women's fertility is unpartnered, is unmarried, and much of it unpartnered. African American women have vastly higher rates of unacknowledged paternity as well. CDC has been tracking that since at least 2016. In the US on the whole, it's like 10% of births are unacknowledged paternity. But my recollection is for African American women, I want to say it's over 30 or 40% or something like that. It might be, I think it's around 30% are unacknowledged. That is, they have no father listed in the birth certificate. What that tells you is just these are women that in 2007, say, were uniquely exposed to the possibility that if something happened to reduce unpartnered fertility, it would reduce their fertility. So, for African American women, they have had a continued decline in partnering rates, just like white women and Asian women, Hispanic women, and everybody else. And that's lowering their fertility. But also, young African American women have been a particular source of dramatic increase in usage um, of long-acting reversible contraceptives, uh, emergency contraceptives, and then also in the last 10 years, we've seen the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen an increase in abortion rates, and that's disproportionately among African American women.
And college, and getting a college degree too. Nothing will
Uh,
delay nothing will
yeah,
delay a woman's fertility like a college degree.
yeah. Is college? I don't know that off the top of my head.
Their
Is college
their
payment
college
rapidly rising for these
graduation
women?
rates have exploded in the last 10, 15 years.
Okay, yeah,
And
that might be.
there's been a real big push for Black women to go to college, to be a
Yeah,
girl
yeah,
boss, to be, and it's all fine. Like, I'm not saying college
yeah,
is bad. I'm just saying that has definitely been part of the entire situation.
yeah. I mean, I can believe that, and there's kind of causality running two directions there, right? That like, um, if your high school is not disrupted by teen pregnancy, you're more likely to go to college. Or if your college completion is not disrupted by a premature pregnancy, you're more
Mhm.
likely to finish. So, but yeah, there may also just be a shift in college attainment. Um, but I do think that it, it's we should not understate the role. I mean, there has been a contraceptive revolution in the U.S. in the last 15 years, and it has been disproportionately among African American women, driven by vasectomies for men, driven by sterilization, early sterilization for women. Um,
Black women are getting sterilized when they're young.
yes, at higher rates than they used to. Yeah, we've seen a generalized shift in contraceptive usage, particularly among African American women, towards what we would call more effective methods.
So now, as we're seeing this decline, I mean, we're seeing decline among a lot of populations, certain populations, but among the non-Latino white population, actual fertility rates, number of children per woman, increased over the last year. I don't know if you saw that. It was like, but not by much. It was like
Yeah,
0.02 or something like that.
yeah, it basically flat.
But it's not declining.
Yeah,
And I spoke to one of the people who I follow along with you, who's a big into demographics. And he just said, like, and I said, was it because of ultra religious Orthodox communities like the Jews, like it's like the Amish, whatever? And they said, no, it's not. They're not big enough to cause that kind of increase yet. He goes, they will be in 2 decades, but they're not there yet. Is it, and there's no data to back this up. This is just a feeling that I have. There's been a really big push in the last 5 years, I would say, among conservatives in Republican circles to get married and have kids. It is something that Charlie Kirk was a big someone talked about. Not, he was not the only one, but he was definitely a high profile person who said it. And get married, have kids was
Mhm.
constantly mentioned. Is there among the non-Latino white community in the US this just political and religious divide of who wants to have kids and is having them and then
Yeah,
not?
so there certainly could be. Previous research points to what we call morale effects. That is, there's times where just the vibes are good for having a baby. And one of the ways that we track the vibes being good is election results. when your party wins an election, you do become a bit more likely to have kids. Um, so it's possible that conservative religious people after Trump's election in 2024 kind of got good vibes off that and made some babies. It's possible.
Wait, was that
Uh,
true under Obama with Democrats as well? They had more kids when Obama was president?
they had a slightly more positive trend versus their pre-trend.
Got
So
it.
it's one of
Okay.
these classic, like it's a causal effect, but it's not necessarily big enough that you'd see it in just plain descriptives. Um, so uh so all that to say, I mean, there could be some, a little bit of like a conservative vibe shift. I have not seen data that could suggest that that specifically a change among religious or conservative people would drive the stability in 2025. Um, I'm not sure about that. In general, I would say the change in 2025 was very small. And I think our prior should probably still be that white fertility is going to decline in the future, because there's not been a marriage revival among white people yet. We're not seeing a big uptick in marriage. We're not seeing a big uptick in desired family size in surveys that are done. Um, so whatever little year to year changes we see will likely be little year to year changes, but they will probably not be a change of the long term trend. Now, I don't think non Hispanic whites are necessarily going to. I think they will probably in the long run be one of the higher fertility groups in the country. But I think, a plausible future for the US is a fertility rate of 1.4 in the long run. And maybe non-Hispanic whites are at 1.45
Mm-hmm.
and Black Americans are at, I don't know, 1.25.
One.
One
Oh,
point, yeah, something, yeah. But
yeah.
you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it could be the decline will be less severe for non whites, but it's not exactly a revival.
Right. No, and it's just interesting. I mean, I have a lot of friends. I'm an elder millennial at this point. So all the friends I have who have kids, I wouldn't say they're all conservative, but they're definitely center right at least. And the liberal
Yeah.
friends I have, virtually none of them had children. Like
Yeah. So what is true is that the gap between liberals and conservatives is growing over time. Um, Both in desired family size, in odds of being married, in desired and in actual number of children. I'm just saying that I don't know that can explain um, the specific trends in like the last 2 or 3 years. That's like a multi-decade trend that's been
Yeah,
going
no, I
on.
understand. Why is it important for Americans to have more kids?
Well, um, I think the first question is why is it important for you to have more kids? So I don't know, Ryan. Do you have kids?
Yes.
Okay, how many kids do you have?
I am going on my second.
Going on your second kid. Okay, why did you have kids?
I
Let me rephrase that. Were you concerned about making sure Social Security was solved?
no.
Okay, just that. Okay, did you think to yourself, I want to help ensure a sufficient base of recruitable manpower for the U.S. military?
No, that also was not in my
Okay,
thing.
so you had some other reason.
Yeah.
Okay, so like, why'd you have kids?
I think a big part of it for me was I wanted to. I I grew up very Catholic, and I thought it's something one you should do is you should have children, and two,
Mhm.
I really like my family, and I like to have more of them.
Yeah,
And I wanted to have more, and
yeah,
and when you get to a certain age, when you get to your mid-30s and you find people doing things they did as children, but there's no children there, it's really, really weird. And
I'm saying
I
one of the most best pronatal policies that we could do in America would be if Florida banned childless people from going to Disney World.
yeah, like I get to do all the things I'd like to do, but like I get to see it from a child's eyes. Like,
Yeah,
oh, like this is
yeah.
like actually a lot of fun. I watched Rugrats the other day with my kid, and I haven't watched that show since I was like probably
No, I
10.
mean, a
But
35-year-old man who spends $200 on Legos for himself is a weirdo. A
yeah, like
35-year-old man who spends
I would
$200
never
on
buy
Legos
Legos for
on his
myself, but I
kids.
kind of can't wait to do Legos as a
I know, right?
yeah.
Yeah, okay, so these are very typical reasons that people give for having kids. Re-experiencing childhood, continuing part of a community that they value, in your case, a family. But you also mentioned, coming from a Catholic background earlier in this conversation, you mentioned you're aware of your ancestry. I think you said Lithuanian. Okay. Um,
I'm also like
so
I say this, I'm also very and this is something I find lacking from a lot of millennials who have arrested development is I am very aware that my parents will not be alive one day. And what does Christmas look like? Like I openly think that. Like what does
yeah,
Thanksgiving look like if I have
yeah,
not made
yeah,
someone else sit at the table?
yeah,
There won't be anybody at the table. And I have
yep,
very good friends who I don't, and I have family members who I don't think that that part of the equation has ever entered into their head.
no,
Like, oh, it will just be just you one
yeah.
day.
This is great. You're giving me all the reasons that come up in surveys on this, like generational continuity, and like reflection on future life outcomes in old age and stuff like that. But the point is, those are all things that concern you particularly. If you didn't have kids, the person who would suffer from that is you. So I would say the main reason it's a problem that Americans are not having kids is because a lot of Americans, if they're honest with themselves, will suffer in various ways for not having those kids, right? They will live their life with 30 years of empty Christmas. Okay.
Mhm,
They will not get to sit around and play with Legos with a child. They will, um, they will, as they age, their life will be missing these experiences that tie you to the future, that give you senses of hopefulness and enjoyment in aging. And crucially, we also just know from tons of surveys that when people get to the end of their reproductive years and they don't have the kids they wanted to have, they're sadder.
mhm,
Okay. They just have lower subjective well being. This is like missing out on the family you wanted to have is just an endemic source of low subjective well being. It just is. And,
mhm.
you know, occasionally I say this and people are like, show me some evidence. And I'm like, okay, I can point you to all the surveys. We've even got like fun ones that like leverage failed IVF rounds and what effect that has on people. And the answer is it like doubles your antidepressant usage and all kinds of stuff. But like fundamentally, I just think it's insane to be like, prove to me that it's sad to not have kids you want. And I'm
Mhm,
like, have you met anyone who wanted to have kids and didn't? Like, have
mhm.
you literally ever met anyone in that? Like, they're not hard to find. And if you just ask them, how do you feel about that? They're like, it sucks.
Yeah, I have
Like
a couple of
I
friends
look at my kid, I look at my friends who have kids, and like I almost don't want to hang out with my friends who have kids now because whenever I see their kids, I think about the kids I don't have. Like
yeah, I
it's
got a good
really
friend
hard.
like that. I have a good
Yeah.
friend. She's 39.
I
She's
mean,
going through her like third round of IVF, and I'm like,
yeah,
I want her to get pregnant more than I want anything in the world because I
I
can
know.
see her pain, like
Yeah.
not be able to
I
have
mean,
child.
we're recording this the day after Father's Day. Like Father's Day and Mother's Day can be really painful holidays for a lot of people.
Mhm,
So I would say the number one reason to care about low fertility is because living in a country where all your neighbors are just freaking miserable because they're mad that they didn't have kids. They're sad that they're not attached to the next generation and they're lonely because there's no one around at holidays. You don't want to live in that country. That's
mhm,
not a pleasant place to live for you or for other people. Now, we could then also talk about other things. Why is it bad that fertility is falling? Well, because I mean, it does mean that Social Security is like long run insolvent and Medicare. Okay, it does mean that like entrepreneurship is going to fall off a cliff, patenting is going to decline, innovation will slow down. Um, it does mean that, like it or not, like the whole like, oh well, will AI replace jobs? I mean, if fertility rates don't recover, we better be praying that AI can replace jobs, because otherwise the jobs are not going to get done.
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
like um like it or not, like the AI is going to be your primary care provider for like a chunk of your life, unless we start birthing a lot more doctors in the future.
And
Um,
there's school closures
and
everywhere.
there's yeah, I mean any number of things, right? So if you don't want it to be like a robot wiping your butt in the nursing home, then you better have babies. Um, and I mean, some people might be like, "Oh, I'm okay with a robot wiping my butt instead of a person," but like, there's a lot of human care that you actually want a human to do.
Yeah.
Um, so I, there are a lot of reasons that falling fertility is a problem.
Yeah. Okay. Is there, last question, is there any parts of the country that you could see likely to, we're going towards a demographic cliff and that there's going to be immense population loss in certain regions of the country?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm from Kentucky. My wife's from Eastern Kentucky and Appalachia. Those areas are already going down, and
Mm,
they're not going to come back. Appalachia is not about to stage a recovery, nor is much of the Great Plains. The places that are depopulating are going to keep depopulating because people flee collapsing areas because they don't want to raise their kids in collapsing areas. Okay,
mhm,
you want to raise your kids in a place that has a future. You hope that your kids will live near you,
mhm.
which they're not going to do if you live in a place that's falling apart. So as more places have declining population, the young people will cluster in fewer and fewer places. Okay, and you see this. Bulgaria has rapidly falling population. You know what doesn't have falling population? The capital city of Sofia, right?
Mhm,
Because everybody knows the capital's not going to go under. Okay,
mhm.
somebody's going to keep the lights on.
Tokyo's the same way.
Tokyo's the same. Seoul is the same way in
Mhm.
Korea. Um, and the result is all the young people try to cluster in one or two cities and they bid the rents up sky high and then they can't afford to have kids. It's like you get this vicious cycle where people are like, oh, well, housing is cheap if you go out to this outlying place. And they're like, yeah, but have you seen that place?
It's so funny. I was talking to I hate city planners. I think they're truly the worst people in the world. Not all of them, but most of them are. And because they think that everyone's going to have 5 kids inside of a 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom apartment that looks like a square box. Like it's awful, awful, awful. They don't know the bare minimums of human society and how they work. And I was just saying, if you outlaw, we're talking about New York City, so if you outlaw cars and you're only building 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom high rises, no one is having children. And they were like, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm like, I'm telling you, it's true. It's not
It's
even
true.
it's not even a question. That's actually the truth. All right, Lyman, I've kept you on for so long. Thank you for coming on this podcast. Where can we go to read more of your stuff? I'm constantly fascinated with what you're throwing out there.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Twitter at Lyman Stone KY. You can also you can find a lot of my work at Institute for Family Studies. That's ifstudies.org.
All right, thanks for coming on this podcast. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Now it's time for the Ask Me Anything segment. If you want to be part of the Ask Me Anything segment, email me Ryan at numbersgamepodcast.com. That's Ryan at numbersgamepodcast.com, plural numbers. First question comes from Chris. He says, thank you for continuing to clang the pots and pans together about how unpopular data centers are in rural America, i.e. Trump country. I live in the suburbs of Cincinnati, which I feel are emblematic of many of your listeners. I drive 20 minutes east. I'm in red America, rural farm country. Drive 20 minutes west. I'm in blue America, decaying industrial sites that have been vacant eyesores for over a generation. Why can't the solution be to hyperscale data centers in brownfield development? I'm guessing that means dying or decaying old factories. I understand the complexities of urban development, i.e. many layers, county, city, neighborhood, government permitting, legacy. But if there was ever an opportunity to remediate brownfield industrial sites, it would be the data centers' money. Yeah, Chris. I mean, and that's the thing is that these Republican leaders in rural America are so desperate for the money that they're being offered, that's being dangled in front of them, that they're willing to do anything. And Democrats they understand how much voters don't like it, and they understand how much voters don't want it. And there's also in the mind of tech companies, there's a lot of layers of money that goes into building one of these things. It's costly. There's a lot of regulations, and it's much easier to build something in red state America than blue state America, or red county America than blue county America. That's just the truth of it all. And that's why these new data centers are moving outside of urban areas. 87% of existing data centers are actually in urban areas, but 2/3 of the ones being planned are in rural areas. So they want them bigger, and they want cheap land, and that's in rural areas. But I agree with you. I think that if you're an urban mayor of this and you say, listen, we're not going to give you a tax break, but your workers will be closer to a city and we'll revitalize it, and there's nothing there anyway, it's an industrial site, I think it's a home run. Okay, next question comes from Keith. He says, love all the data and insights you provide. Here's a couple things I would like to know. What is the best pizza you've ever had? What, where, and why? Your to-go toppings, and what are toppings are absolute deal breakers. Also, is the Houston numbers game going to happen? Okay, I love this question. Love this question. This is from Keith, by the way. Best pizza I've ever had is probably in Naples, in Italy. I went on a cruise on Norwegian cruise line a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And no, it was definitely over a year and a half ago. It was almost 2 years ago. And we stopped in Naples, and the fat person that I am, the cruise line's always asking you to do these excursions. Like, I don't care. But I saw an excursion for a bus tour with pizzerias. So I, being the fat ass that I am, excuse my language, but it's the truth, I was like, oh, we're going to go from pizzeria to pizzeria across Naples. No, it was a bus tour of Naples that stopped in a single pizzeria. So we got off halfway through, me and my group, and we just went to any random pizzeria, and it was incredible. It was the best pizza I've ever had. The pizza that I had, I actually looked it up, what the name of it was, and I wrote it down, and now, of course, I cannot find it. I will have to look that up for you later, but it's basically pistachio, pesto, and mortadello with burrata. It is unbelievable, but I don't know if it's any good in America because I've only had it in Naples. If you're talking stateside, in New York, the pizzerias I would recommend are John at Bleecker. It's 10 out of 10. Just get the regular pie there. L&B Spumoni Gardens in Brooklyn. You want to get a half a pie, and I love a good Sicilian slice. It's only Sicilian slices. And then over in Queens, there's a place called Joey's of Maspeth. It's a pizzeria that has sesame seeds on the crust. That's the place you want to get pepperoni. I'm not a toppings guy. I only get toppings if I'm doing a non-traditional pizza. So if I'm doing pesto, I'm doing chicken, I'm doing red onions, I'm doing Kalamata olives, I'm really tomatoes, I'm going to town. That's what I think. As far as, and by the way, no pineapple. You want to hear a deal breaker? No pineapple on a pizza. Okay, I'm going to, you asked about the Houston event. Yes, I am going to be going and speaking at the Log Cabin Republicans of Houston. They're flying me out to be their keynote speaker if I ever get over this cold. And I will be speaking there. And then the next day I will be doing a live event, a live taping of Ask Me Anything, a live taping of a numbers game, and with the Ask Me Anything segment where people can ask live. I don't know the location. I don't know the place. I don't know the venue. I really have no details because I just made this agreement like a week ago, and I'll figure it out. When I know the details, I will let you guys know. I'll make a website so you can share it with people, or a page. I would love to see as many people there as possible. I'm trying to find someplace where it's easy for everyone to get to, which I know in Houston is hard because everything is a million miles away from each other. All right, that's this episode. Thank you guys for being here. If you like this show, please like and subscribe on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and I will talk to you guys on Friday.